Just a quick note before I get to it. I wrote this episode 2 days ago when the total number of deaths in America from COVID-19 stood at about 700, and I projected that I could safely estimate 1,000 deaths by the time this podcast came out. And of course, it has far exceeded that. So, be safe, stay home, find peace. My thanks to the many medical heroes in this tragedy and the level-headed multitudes who are trying so hard to steer us towards safer shores, while Trump does everything he can to sink us. It's been a month since Tony's freakout over the unwashed hands and, well, every other unwashed part belonging to old Herbert. And I'd like to tell you everything ended well just the same. It was a minor event in each of their lives when you get right down to it. An embarrassment both were happy to forget. Besides, they had a few other things to consider. COVID-19 pulled up outside of D.C. home storage in the form of a leaderless leader. A wartime president who ran away from war and couldn't see the war-sized problem right in front of him. The indecision that stank up the White House spread to Congress and choked the streets and made the crowds grow and grow with every unsubstantiated rumor, and gave people the great idea to laugh in the face of known science, in the face of established fact, in the face of what every single other person in the world was saying outside of Donald Trump. And while I'm sure that paying our teachers poverty wages and teaching superstition and ignorance instead of science in our schools for the past 30 years had absolutely nothing to do with it, it was a recipe for spectacular disaster nonetheless. Over at WGNO, self-righteous fat-ass in the morning said that a virus couldn't be deadly if we believed in Trump hard enough. And people died. Ancient white guy plays stuff nobody really needs to care about, played a lot of ads for buying gold, and hyped Trump's stellar stock market. The highest ever? Probably. Did that make America great? As they choked on their last breath, one by one? Sure, why not? Did that help most people even one bit? No, silly, it helped Trump. Then corporate shill insisted Trump never said the virus was a hoax, and anyway, it'll all clear up so we can all go to church on Easter Sunday and touch faces and lick eyeballs and share sweat and then promptly die in the messiest fashion since, well, at least since Trump's latest business venture. And at D.C. home, old, fragile Alicia started to cough one morning, laying in the dark. It was a dry cough, insistent. Sean and Sherry whispered a few feet away, him asking if she should take Alicia to the hospital, and she telling him to just shut the hell up or I'll kick you. But the cough continued. Sherry tried bringing Alicia some water, but Alicia found it to be too cold. They didn't have refrigeration or heat. The water was simply sitting on the floor with everything else, in bottles that had been refilled so often they felt thin. Refrigeration wasn't needed. Heat would have been good, but they had cold down to a science. It was heat they prayed for. As voices of reason began to drown out those of that guy who didn't win the election but was clearly an orange-headed nut job, drowned him out by the millions, Tony over at D.C. Home had a choice. He could either evict all the homeless. That would be easy. He'd had police officers offering to help. Or he could drive his truck up South Washington Boulevard to the Pentagon Access Road and really gun his engine. I mean, just plow straight at those gates or whatever they had. They were bound to have enough security to take down one brown-skinned guy who needed a way out. The homeless population had been growing. He and Daisy had counted 68 heads, men, women, and children. And Daisy kept telling Tony, she told him every day, those people have got to be separated. It's for their own good. They can't sleep in such tight quarters because if one of them has it, they all have it. Daisy found her father sitting on the curb on the street outside, smoking an extra stinky cigarette. And he told her, it's not like normal people, Daisy. They're all together. They all got it. If one's got it, it's too late. Or, Daisy told him, maybe it's not. Maybe they don't all have it. Maybe there is still time. And if that's the case, it would be criminal not to separate them now. It would be criminal to deny them a chance. Don't tell me about what's criminal, mija. Tony didn't need anything else. Believe in curses or don't, things were pretty bad by themselves already. He said, I just want to do what's right, okay? But there's people dying now, right? Like, we're getting near... We're going to be at like 1,000 soon, right? I think we hit that already, Daisy said. See, her father told her. I'm not a big man, Daisy. I'm not important or influential. I work for people. They give me a job to do and I do it. Or I let a bunch of bums sleep in the building instead of doing it because I'm no good at talking to people, especially smelly... You're asking the wrong guy to make this grand gesture, young lady. I'm not a hero. I'm not the guy to fix this. I won't kid you. Tony was in a bad place. But could you blame him? This was a good job. It was good to him. He knew he was messing that up. He couldn't bear what blowing this opportunity would do to their lives. And they didn't know Daisy very well. Heck, I still haven't FaceTimed with her. But Sean tells me all about her. He tells me about her hair and the things she's studying and how nice she smells. Constantly. These are not emails anyone should have to read, so I immediately forward them to Sherry. Hey, she said she wanted to know. It's not my fault she shouldn't have asked. Daisy is someone pretty special, though. She designed a building in Sims 3, which is a video game I'm not being paid to plug. Mostly because nowadays they're pushing Sims 4, I think. Are they at 5? Anyway, Daisy still had the third version, into which Daisy built a fairly faithful reproduction of DC Home. Instead of storage units, she used a series of garages, closets, and hutches, which the game didn't allow her to populate with actual Sims, something about it not being safe to house a family of 5 Sims inside a closet. So she populated it in reproductions in cat and dog. Old Herbert, for instance, appeared as the mangiest old basset hound you'd ever not really care to see. There were also 2 guests. Why would you include 2 guests? Daisy's father asked. Which is when Daisy had to explain that they were the 2 guests. This was the home of the homeless now. People had stopped coming around to look at their possessions or store even more possessions. The 68 homeless occupants were all divided into their own homes, which were storage units, of course, which were equitable insofar as each home was sized for the person. And also, no one ended up in a hutch. Daisy and Tony could take each one of the garage bays in the back, which would keep the front office neutral should anyone come by who might not understand this strange new game they were playing. The garage bays were open, but the weather wasn't terribly awful. Both furnished their bay with a sleeping bag on a box spring and worked in separate shifts, tending to the residents. Food had to be purchased, which meant funds had to be shared, which meant orders had to be picked up, which meant transportation had to be secured. And the minute that was done, someone was sick, and Daisy or Tony would have to tend to them and clean them and feed them. And when they went to sleep in their separate bays, they washed their hands with gritty soap and waited for some word of hope out in the world. We haven't gotten to that part of the story yet, the part with the hope. So I can't really tell you that part of the story. At least, not yet. If there is hope to be found anywhere, I can tell you a story I heard from two different sources, both Sherry and Tony. It seems Sean couldn't sleep one night, and though they lived in separate units, Sherry could hear Sean making his way out in the middle of the night. Said he had to pee. Sherry told him that's what the empty cans of Monster Energy drink were for. Then he said it was more than pee. How much more? Sherry asked. And he was gone pretty soon after that, because he was learning the pitfalls of asking just such a question. Over by the garage bays, down at DC Home Storage, there's a couple of snack machines sitting there in the dark. If that's why Sean went there, he'd be in for a pretty big disappointment. The fact that they had been turned off for years could have told him they had nothing to offer. But, as I mentioned, that isn't why he was there. Sean was there this particular morning in March, just before 3 a.m, because Daisy had just finished her shift tending to the residents. And Sean knew this because he'd been following her work schedule for nearly as long as he had known her. I'm sure it had nothing to do with her being the only girl his age, at least on this property. Sean watched as Daisy walked back in the dark, her shoulders slumped a bit. He said, "Hey there, beautiful," she asked. "What?" He said, "Nothing. I just coughed." "Is there something you want?" she asked. She took one step toward Sean, and it was the closest someone had come to him in a while. At least, a female someone. At least, a female someone who wasn't his aunt. At least, intentionally. Sean heard Daisy's question and denied ever wanting anything ever in his whole life. Ever. She said, "I've seen you hanging out here. Shouldn't you be in your assigned unit?" Sean didn't have the time to consider just how many jokes he could make with a softball like assigned unit. Besides, he was kind of sure he liked this girl and didn't want to ruin their chance at love and possible marriage. Maybe a home up in the Rockies. Sean was certain that would be more Daisy's style, up in the Rockies with his assigned unit. Daisy asked, "Are you even listening?" And the words rushed out of Sean's mouth all at once. "I've seen you hanging around here, and I don't know, maybe it's a vibe, maybe that's it. There's a vibe going on between us here. I know I'm feeling it. Are you feeling it? Because I'm feeling it." Am I feeling what? Daisy asked. It probably wasn't the right time to ask for a kiss. Sean was pretty sure of that. He could have told himself that, had he been the type to listen. But he had never had a kiss, and wanted one in the worst way. And so he asked for one in the worst way. He said, "Maybe you might want to kiss, or I could kiss with those lips. But for you, not me. You... Sean was bound up in a knot of his own words and could have used some help just then. Wasn't going to get it, though. He was, after all, a good 10 feet from Daisy. She was all the way over in the garage, and he was sitting outside by the old vending machines, which is likely the reason why Daisy asked him, with the straightest face you might imagine in such a scenario, "You want to kiss me?" "Me?" Sean asked. You want me to... Me? Did you want me... Me, Daisy called over to him. "Oh, you," Sean said. "Oh, okay. Sure, I'd kiss you." Daisy was probably silent for as long as she was because she was hoping she wouldn't have to talk. But she couldn't help herself. She asked, "From all the way over there? 'Cause you're not coming over here." I've got a mint in my pocket," Sean offered. "What?" she asked. I've got a mint." Daisy looked at him for a while in the dark, silent. Sean waited quietly for her to reply, and then Sean decided that he probably should have mentioned the mint long ago. Long ago. Besides, it wasn't even a mint, it was a butterscotch. Sean had been holding on to it for nearly a week. He had plans for that butterscotch. "Maybe another time?" Sean offered. To which Daisy asked from way downfield, "What?" And I don't take any joy in telling you that this was when Sean realized that Daisy could neither hear or even see him very well. Back there in the dark, Sean could do or say just about anything he liked. And the less said about that, the better. Men, after all, are pigs. And Washington, D.C. has its hand in all our homes. But you already knew that. Welcome to D.C. Home. Until next time, be good to yourself, be kind to others, and let's make this world a better place. This is Ken LaSalle, and I just wanted to thank you for stopping by for this episode of DC Home. For more information about myself and the work I do, I invite you to take a look at my website at kenlasalle.com. You can also find me on Amazon, Audible, iTunes, and anywhere you find ebooks, paperback books, and audiobooks online. That's also where you'd find DC Home Season 1, available in ebook and in audio. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube by searching my name, Ken LaSalle. And thank you, as always, for your support.